Well, it's Wednesday, so it's time for another Business Analysis Live. My name is Susan Moore. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at IIBA.
And I'm Scott Bennett. I'm the Manager of Business Analysis here at the International Institute of Business Analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about becoming a business
Hmm.
architect. Now, something that you might have heard about, business architecture, not quite sure what it's about. Well, we've got an expert here today that's going to help us through this conversation and share her insights. Now, Susan, you had met Breanne a while ago at a conference, right?
I did. In fact, she held a very successful meetup of other people who are business architects and want to be business architects. And so there was a lot of interest in this within our community. So I'm really glad that she is out there talking about business architecture because there's some myth and some rumor about it. And I'm glad that she decided to join us today.
Yeah, so let's dig right into it. Welcome, Breanne.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for
Hello.
joining us today. For those of you that don't know Breanne, would you introduce yourself to our live audience today?
Absolutely. My name is Breanne Casteel, and I came up through business analysis into business architecture. I recently became a business architect about a year and a half ago, so I'm using my business analysis skills in this realm as well. I currently work at Campgrounds of America, KOA. We have campgrounds in the United States and Canada all over.
That's great. Well, thank you for joining us again. Why don't we start just to orient people around what business architecture is? We'll start there at the very start, and then we'll sort of talk about how do you transition to this, the type of traits, and those type of details.
Sure. Business architecture, if I can kind of take the terminology out of it, it's what I say when you even talk to a business, when you explain business architecture, right? You don't come with the nit and gritty of I need the how, the capabilities, the values, all that sort of stuff. So high level, business architecture is really framing the why we do things, make change in an organization, and enabling the how. The how could be leadership decisions, the how could be delivery of initiatives. We also really serve as a bridge between our strategic vision and the operational execution, which that sounds like a lot, but we set it apart to see the whole business ecosystem overall. And with doing that, we can really help our objectives, strategic vision, and aligning that to make sure what we're doing in execution aligns with those strategic values and visions. So we're not just doing things because it's the next hot topic, right? Shiny thing.
Okay.
So we really enable that in a structured way, I should say.
Good.
Yeah, I think some of the discussions that that we've had even here on this broadcast around business architecture, I think there is maybe some myth that this is a more technical kind of a job. What's your experience been with the kinds of responsibilities that you have and the kind of skills that you bring into it?
Sure. I do come from a technical background. So I will say that I do have that bias. I did come to enable the technology department. Okay. But to be a successful business architect, you have to leave that at the door. So you have that in your toolkit, if you will, to you understand technology. So it's not a bad skill to have. But the bigger skill that you need is to communicate with the business, to listen to pain points, to be empathetic, so that stakeholder collaboration, working with humans instead of just the technology side, which could be a little bit more difficult, right? Let's not kid ourselves. But yeah, you don't need a technical background, but it's not a bad thing to have.
Yeah, especially if you have been in the organization for a while, and so you've been with your organization for a little bit. So you know the culture, you know the technology, and you knew some of the capabilities. So you didn't just get hired into this job. Maybe talk a little bit about how you went from being a business analyst to moving into this role.
Sure. I moved into this role due to pain points where I was. We did not have enterprise architecture, business architecture at our organization. So level set there. We had, leadership running their meetings and whatnot for priority and discussion, but we didn't have those roles, that structure. So my pain point being in delivery and initiative horizon for a business analysis was the shifting priorities that we would get. So from that, I learned strategic analysis could help me and the business, of course, see where we had to go, research that a little bit further, and found, thank you to Roger Burleton at BBC, dug into business architecture, came back to our organization. And you talk about storytelling a lot, Susan, right? Told a story about how our organization can benefit from having business architecture, and they bought it. I say I'm not a salesperson. I don't like to do sales pitches at all, but something I said or did, they loved it, and they added it at the organization. So then I got hired in to it, and then I figured out, oh my goodness, what did I
what
get
did I do that for?
I knew
Yeah.
why, but then it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I make this successful? Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting story, right? Because your organization maybe hadn't done any thinking about what would the responsibilities of this role be. So you've been able to craft this opportunity. What resources have you looked at in order to understand the kinds of things you should be doing?
Just like with business analysis, because I will say I built business analysis at our organization from the ground up as well. And I am very much standards, procedure, and then using that in the best way to get the best outcome, right? So it's not,
Okay.
you always have to follow this outline to get there, but making sure the backbone is set. So like I said, I did that with business analysis at our organization, and now we've tripled in size. So we have more business analysis, but I wanted to do the same thing with business architecture. I didn't want to just go, okay, this is what we need. I'm going to do it how I feel it best. Did reach out. I worked a lot with Roger Burleton and Sasha. I also got onto the Business Architecture Guild, the BizBot guide. So like the Babot guide, they have their body of knowledge as well, and
Okay.
learned through that and got certified. So I wanted to build the structure the right way that other people before me have found out this is probably what you should be doing. So I wanted to build that first.
Okay. And maybe with your business analysis background, can you share with our viewers who are looking at becoming business analysis professionals or maybe mature in their career, how business architecture relates to business analysis? How do these two things work together, and how do you potentially transition from one to the other?
Those are great questions. The first one on basically, I would think of that as the alignment. I'm still digging into. I think that is a piece that still should be brought out further. So hopefully in the future, I can talk to you guys about more details of specific alignment and what, and graphs and diagrams and stuff. But the big picture, Scott, is we need to enable, remember, so we are framing the why and enabling the how. So the how, I would think, is business analysis, how we are going to implement these outcomes, right? So with that being said, we need to take the priority, the why, take the business outcomes, have these stakeholders' decisions at the leadership level to then provide that to the business analysis teams in order to implement on those. So they're not just guessing why they're doing things. They know. We have provided that information for them. And then how you can move into it, that is really a mindset, I would say, overall. That the biggest piece is going to be mindset. It's not, I want to say first off, it's not a career path, right? It is one. Okay, so it is a career path, sorry, but it's not the career path, right? It's not that I'm a business analyst and I want to go, my next step is a business architect. Business architecture is holistic, the whole big picture. You have to be able to see the whole to actually connect those dots, as Roger says, right? To connect them, collect them, and then you can correct them. But if you don't like to see the big, you like to be in the details, then don't. You're not going to be happy, right?
Right.
But if you do see that, then how? You just start researching it. I would say first get mentors. reach out to me on LinkedIn, other people, kind of pick their brains on how maybe the next step to learn, the best lessons learned, next steps there. That would be a great starting point.
Now, one thing we talked about, Breanne, before we started the live stream was that stakeholder engagement, that comfort level you need in front of executives, going from perhaps working on projects into this type of role, that might seem a little intimidating. How do you guide people with that type of conversation?
Oh, you have to be comfortable with not being comfortable. You really do. You need to sell it. Just like I'm sure business analysts, the first time they had to run a stakeholder focus group, it's not that comfortable. It's, oh my gosh, am I going to know the answers to all the questions? Right. So if you start getting comfortable with that, the biggest thing I can say is no matter the group, person, executive, end user, whoever is in the room, if you believe in what you're talking about and you know you've done your research, then you simply just present it. It doesn't matter who. So find comfort in knowing you've done your work. Believe in yourself that you know how to run a stakeholder group.
Yeah.
And then just work with that.
And I think part of the art in this case as well is how to talk to executives, because when I was working as a junior business analysis professional, I had no clue how to do that. It is a different language, a different approach than dealing with other stakeholders. So I guess dipping your toe in that pool, you have to learn pretty quickly in terms of how to communicate effectively with leaders because they're so constrained on time, for example.
Yes, it is. Just because it's important to me does not mean it's important to them. That was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
So I also learned, I had a great mentor. I had this cute presentation I wanted because I bring details. Business analysis, you bring the details. I've done the research. I need to show that to my stakeholders so they believe what I'm saying. Scott, to your point, I'm learning, and all leadership may be different, okay? But what I've learned through the hard way, I will say, it's trial and error, is they don't necessarily want to see your details, your research. They want to see, what do you want of me? What do I need out of this? I need a decision. I need to inform you on this so you can make a decision. You have to come with the why you're even calling them together and then keep it very succinct and to the point and say, if you need more details, or don't even say that, but no, if they ask for more, you know it, then it's almost like an appendix, right? But just bring that. So that was a hard pill for me to swallow, Scott, was that I felt I needed to prove myself, especially because I'm new in this field. I'm new to those leadership meetings. They don't know that I've done the research. I need to prove to them. I didn't. They don't have time for it, right?
Yeah. The best advice I heard about talking with executives was at BBC a year and a half ago. And it was an executive talking, and they said, when someone comes in the room to present to me, give me the last slide first. Don't give me all the preamble of all the research you've done, all the details, all the whys. Tell me what you want to tell me, and then let me ask the questions that gets to that. And I thought, wow, what a different approach than what we're used to.
That's a great point. And as an example, if I may, I did have a whole presentation. I wanted to bring a change in our culture for strategy to execution, right? And I laid out of all the different things that our organization does in it looks like a context map, not a context map, I'm sorry, a concept map. So just relation and boxes. I made it really simple. But then I broke down each section into what do we have? What are we missing? I did all of the details, right? The research. And I wanted to present that to our CEO going, okay, here's what I'm proposing. And I showed that to one of my mentors ahead of time, like maybe a half an hour before I went in. And he said, not from our organization, but he goes, okay, this is great information. What do you want out of that meeting? I go, oh, that's a good question. And so I walked into the meeting and I didn't even pull up my slide deck. I had my one slide look like a concept map, right? I showed that and I sat down and I said, I want your approval to move forward with this concept, not overnight, but to create a roadmap of change. But I want your approval on this concept for change. It
Okay.
took me, I had an hour long. It took me 18 minutes for a yes, go. Yes, I timed it, right? Because it meant that much to me. Like, oh my gosh, I got to the point. I didn't have to go through all this information. She understood. I answered the question, Scott, to your point. And then I got my outcome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that is such a very different way of thinking about our work. So, what I hear you say is that business architects, we do need to know our stuff, but an important skill set is you need to be able to simplify complex things and be able to tell a story and or understand the decision that you need so that you can present that. And before we were went live today, you used the term trusted advisor. That's a component of what business architects do. And I think that is a very different kind of a role than many of our delivery level business analysis professionals work in. Because trusted advisors don't just go in and take orders from top level folks. They do what you described. Sometimes they ask questions to get people thinking, even when they don't know the answer, because that's what advisors do. They help to get the room thinking. What other kinds of things might fall under that trusted advisor component of being a business architect, do you think?
There, oh gosh, there's a lot of examples even that you would, you have to be able to feel comfortable with asking the questions, as you said. Because one main point I want to pull out is that you as a business architect, just like a business analyst, you as a business architect are not there to make the decision. It is not up to you. What you are there to do is bring the information to leadership to enable them to make the decision. So you have to have all your information, put it in a nice way that they can actually make those decisions. And like you said, Susan, be that trusted advisor. You only gain trust by doing that because then they see, okay, I got the outcome that I wanted. Yeah, it was hard conversation. Like, yeah, I hear you say this is what you want as your end result, but what does success look like? What is going to change? Why are we doing this? Like asking those questions, and they may be frustrated at the beginning. Like, no, I just said go do this, but just to take the time to say, hey, well, we also have this going on over here. This is going to impact this. So what if we kind of switch this up? What do you think about that? But then you're going to build that trust when they see the value that
Hmm.
your questions have provided to them, the more efficient delivery, right? The more value to your end user because you thought of outcomes up front instead of just solutions. So all you have to build that trust.
You
Right.
know what? As you're answering that question, I am seeing that there's actually two things going on in that trusted advisor role. One is the advising, but one is the building trust.
Oh
That's
yes.
actually two pieces of what you've got to do as to be successful in that trusted advisor role. Um, you also mentioned, there's this is a career path, but it is not the career path. Is so that sort of implies that maybe being a business architect isn't for everyone. How would you know if business architecture is for you? It's Scott. It's like you were reading my mind
Scott's on top of it. Good job.
on top of it.
Let's say business architecture, at least for me and some of the others that I've talked to, I know some organizations have teams of business architects, right? So you're still on a team, you're still working with a lot of different people. However, some organizations, and it was what happened to me, my experience, is I had to be a self starter because it wasn't here, or you're a team of one. So you have to be comfortable with ambiguity to know where do I need to go, trust myself that that's where I should go and go do that to produce the value. You also have to be okay with seeing the big picture and not moving item to item or project to project. It is, as I've used this terminology, business architecture is like a cruise liner, right? If you need to change course, It takes a lot of time because you're changing culture. You're changing not just ways of working. This is an important point, but ways of thinking. You have to change the ways of thinking before you change the way of working for an organization.
Hmm.
That takes a lot more time to steer that ship in a different direction than a business analyst, where you're going, okay, we need to make a change with this requirement, with this project. I need to go talk to the stakeholder, and you're sprint to sprint to sprint. It's a lot faster. So, same skills, but you have to be willing to go slower. And a pain point, if I may add, is if you like the details and you move into architecture, you have to be careful to let the business analysts do the depth,
Okay.
because you
Yeah.
can't do the breadth and the depth and be successful to your organization. Like, yeah, all of that needs to be done, but you have to see the breadth, you have to see the whole picture and stay at that higher level, if you will, of the ecosystem as an architect, and then enable that for the business analysts. So be careful. I'm saying that I'm saying lessons learned here. I did not do that very well. It's like, yeah, let's start this. Okay, now I'm going to go talk to these stakeholders and do this. And I was like, wait, nope, that's not my job anymore.
Yeah. And that's good advice because over the years, I've done different roles in business analysis. I was in an operations area for a while and realized I don't actually like the operation stuff because it's little pieces, ongoing. It didn't give me that sense of accomplishment that I like from large projects and digging my teeth into. So, if that's really what you're in tune to as well, maybe architecture might not be your thing if you really
Absolutely.
enjoy those victories at the end of a difficult project.
Yeah. Instead of sprint to sprint victories, you may have one every 6 months, if that. I'm
If
just gonna
Yeah.
be honest with you.
I'm here, I'm gonna show you a comment because Amal and I were thinking the same thing. And by the way, hello, Amal. He's been a guest on Business Analysis Live. Business architecture is playing the long game. It
Yes.
really is. I mean, you've got to be comfortable playing the long game. And maybe to sort of quote myself, um, business architecture is also a relationship business. And that's in part why it's a long game. Changing minds, changing hearts, changing attitudes, changing culture, those things take a long time. So thanks, Emma. Well, hey, don't forget we are live with Breanne today, and we want to take your questions. We've got some questions lined up, but feel free to drop in some more questions. Do you guys want to take some questions? Or Scott, do you have any more questions? Breanne, any more?
I've got one more.
Yeah.
Brain, you mentioned a while ago that when you were looking at getting into business architecture in your current organization, you talked about pain points and you said your approach was starting with the pain points. Tell us a little bit more about that and why you started that way.
Yeah, that's a really great question. What I found in business architecture is there's no one place to start. That was a
Okay.
frustration of mine because I was learning business architecture and needing to implement at the same time. And I didn't know where to go, where to start. So, what I ended up doing, right or wrong, but I will sit here, lessons learned again, and say it worked for me, for our organization. I've talked to a lot others that give me scenarios. I was like, well, it sounds like this is your pain point. Is that right? And then we kind of work through that. So I started with a pain point of what I knew, what I felt. I knew the whole IT department felt. So that was that whole delivery, the shifting priorities, the initiative management, if you will, if you're talking about business architecture. So I started with that pain point, Scott, and I go, okay, so that was my first aha moment of, oh, this is how I could use a value stream. And then I didn't even tell the business that I was doing that. And I used that in a workshop. Like I had that structure across the top going, okay, well, do we agree on this? Well, this is what needs to be done to enable that. But that was my first use of business architecture, was starting with the pain points, and then you go to the next one. And you
Okay.
go, because that's what you're doing. You're really solving pain points for the business.
Yeah. Yep. And you have to take some initiative to do that. So you need to, in some ways, feel like it's kind of part of what you are, what you do naturally. So I think if that's a good fit. So if you are somebody in an organization that is able to see pain points, see around corners, that is a good skill to have if you think that you want to be a business architect. Well,
And Susan, just really
yeah,
quickly on that, that is a good point that business analysis they listen to stakeholders,
mhm,
right? So they do the stakeholder analysis, the workshops, but it's active listening. If you
yeah,
have that as a business analyst and you're able to listen to these pain points, but instead of just going, oh, it's a solution that will solve it, maybe it's a change to our process. Maybe it's a change to our framework. Like it's high, it could be higher level, right? So that's what I would say. Pull on your business analysis, your stakeholder listening skills to make sure
yeah.
you hear the pain points.
And we talked earlier about there is a set of skills that business analysis professionals use every day. When you move into business architecture, you've just got to scale those up. Because this is an Angela Wick quote: "Your soft skills amplify your hard skills at that higher level," and that's why those soft skills, those people skills, are so essential at that higher level. Um, it's important to know your stuff, but you're going to lean into a whole different set of skills. All right. Well, let's see. Let's. I have a mix of comments and questions today. So this one came in. This is from Angelica, and this came in when we were talking through how to speak to executives. So she says, "What I feel is important is to learn that when you talk to executives, you have to use a different language. If you go into details, you lose their attention." Yeah, thinking in terms of maybe even spend some time building that skill set for executives, because they don't have time. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to this. And actually, she has a follow up thought. So I'll share the follow up thought. She says key points and visualizations, which it sounds like in your example, you use that to maximum effect.
Oh, absolutely. And pictures worth a thousand words. We know that as BAs as well. It's the
Yeah.
exact same, Angelica, your point on that, especially at the leadership level. Anything that can get them to see your point faster and efficiently, use it.
Yeah. Another technique for that is analogies. If you get someone, you're trying to relay a concept to them and you can show something that's familiar, this is just like this, that helps get a point across very quickly too.
Great point. Yep.
You mentioned an example where you were talking to some leaders, and I think you said to yourself, well, normally I would use like a context diagram for this. But you thought, well, why would I use that technique for these? But so there will be some things that you can borrow, some techniques that you can borrow when it comes to visualizations. You can use those at that higher level. Visualizations are
Absolutely.
good.
Yep. And that actually helps business architecture too. If we think about it, because in business architecture, just to give a little bit of it, you have your business units, you cross map that with your what and why you do with the business, right? A context map will help us with that as well. Because if we are trying to enable leadership to see the impact of a change, that's a concept map. It may not have the exact, solution requirements on it, but what it will give us is the solution and who we are impacting. So then they could even start to think about, oh yeah, this needs to be prioritized. But I mean, it's just helpful. Absolutely.
Yeah. So bring your techniques. You'll still be able to use those. All right. So here's our next question from Yaden. Just wanted to know how business architects might be different from product owners.
Great question. Product owners are still a specific product and they work with the future vision of the product. Business architecture is you may have multiple products or you only have one. However, a product you map to, or it is a piece of your architecture, I should say. It is a capability that you have. A business architect works with all your capabilities, all your business units, all of your value streams, how you do things, and cross map them. Product owners don't do that because they are working in a specific product and how to develop on and make that product better. So even think higher in the business, you are seeing the whole ecosystem across all products, services, people, initiatives, everything. It's just trying to make it better. I would say you're enabling the BAs, you're enabling the POs as well, right?
Yeah.
As a business architect. So there's alignment, but they are absolutely not the same focus, if that helps.
Okay. Yeah, that does help. I know that's some of the what we talked earlier about the relationships and how you would enable how business architects would enable business analysis. I know that's something that you are currently thinking about. And by the way, you're probably going to be doing some talks on this at some point. So people should follow you on LinkedIn so they can see as you're evolving these thoughts into talks and things. It'll be
Yeah,
good to
and in
read.
the YouTube video description, we'll put Breanne's LinkedIn
Yeah.
link there, so you can click on that and follow her.
Let's so now when we were getting ready for today, we said we might get a question like this. And now we have this question. So this is from
Yes.
Adewale. What is the difference between a solution architect and a business architect?
Okay. I'm going to paint the picture because I see a couple other comments about
Hmm.
IT architect, app data tech, there's EA. So
Yep.
if I can just paint and I have a great slide I can share if we do a webinar later, not,
Okay.
yeah, a different time, but painting a picture. So there's enterprise architecture is an umbrella over all the architectures you have in your organization. Okay. So just think about the big bubble. Business architecture works with the how, what, and why of the business, very high level, so we can cross map that, make decisions, and align that to strategic goals and objectives, and enable, like I said, the how. Okay. Also, business architecture needs to align to IT architecture. By IT architecture, there are three pieces. So there's application, data, and technical architecture. All three of those are individual architectures that the business architect works with to explain why does the business need this technology? Why does the business need a change in this system? Okay, or the data, the information. Solution architecture, I think somebody else asked solution architecture as well. Solution architecture is a slice at the bottom of all of that. Their scope is of a project or an initiative of the existing one solution. So they take what is relevant to that solution out of the business, app, data, tech, and they use that all that information that those architects have put together to enable that solution. So they all align to each other. They should all communicate and work together, but they are succinct roles in what they do, what their focus is on to get to the best outcome.
Wow, great description. Thank you
Yeah,
for
I
that.
think that's a
Thank you.
great description. And you know what? If that showed up as a LinkedIn post on your profile, I think you'd probably get a lot of, I think it'd go viral.
Viral.
Just, just saying, just saying, because I think there is a lot of mystery about how those work together. All right, so thank you both. Thank you, Adewale and David, for those questions. Let's see. All right, here's another question. So this question is from Wisam. Advice for junior business analyst. And so maybe we'll frame this as if you are somebody new to the profession and you are thinking, ooh, business architecture might be something I would like to do. What guidance would you give a junior business analyst?
Yeah. My experience, what I would recommend personally that could kick you if you did want to say, do I want to become a business architect? Or maybe I know this sounds great. I want to think bigger picture. Since you're coming from a lens of business analysis, junior, intermediate, senior, I would say any of them. I would say I would lead you to the AAC, Agile Analysis Certification. Even if you didn't want to get certified, read that extension. That brings you into the three horizons. Focus on the strategic analysis piece. That will really bring you into the frame of mind that you should have even to go into business architecture. So as a junior NEBA, learn more about strategic analysis first. If you find you like that, then I would go into learning more about business architecture. There is more out there. Like I said, the Business Architecture Guild is out there. They have that BizBot guide. They do the certification for business architects as well. that you can learn more about it.
And, doing meetups and things like the one that you had at BBC this year, talk to a business architect to really see like what's a day in the life of a business architect. And I bet your journey will be different. From I was a business architect for a hot minute, my journey was very different, and I'm sure Rogers is different. And I find that in our community, um, there will be folks in those roles who will gladly talk to people that are considering those roles. So yeah, talk to an architect. Maybe that needs to be like a holiday. Talk to an architect day. Okay. um, you touched on this a little bit. This is another question that is from and this was a question for us about, do we have certification for business architects? The short answer is no, but you've mentioned the Agile Analysis certification, and whether or not you get that, I think you're right. Because I was going to bring up earlier, you use that term three horizons, and that is introduced in the Agile extension. I think those are really important because I do think that people think about just the delivery of work, and maybe not all of the strategy and or the initiative level. So I think that might be a good one, but just any of the other core certifications, ECBA, which does not include strategy analysis, by the way. So the CCBA and the CBAP, but no, we don't specifically have one for business architects. But I will, Breanne, I'll let you talk about your certifications. Which certifications did you get?
Yeah, for business analysis. So I have the ECBA. I will say sometimes I go, oh, why didn't I get the CBAP? But I wanted to know enough, right? So I I am going to be happy with that. And then the CPOA, when it came out, Certified Product Ownership Analysis, that one, and then the AAC, Agile Analysis Certification. I would double down on your comment, Susan, that AAC, that was for me personally one of the most beneficial certifications that I had for practicality,
Mm-hmm.
for this is going to enable what I do, not just how I need to do it, but to go in there and get it done with my organization. And those three horizons, strategic, initiative, delivery, those are key. I feel, for a business architect as well, to understand in a business. Even if you're not involved in it, it helps us when we're having these discussions with different people in the organization to understand there's different levels, and they all need to be talking and communicating. Because if they're not, if there's breakdown, that's where our inefficiencies happen. So I would double down on that AAC and say we need to understand those three horizons. They are so super important. And then, as asked on the screen, the business architect certification from the Guild, that's a certified business architect certification, but that is from the Guild.
Yeah, it's a separate organization. I also have the AAC, and when I first read about the three horizons, I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, this makes perfect sense. I understand
Does.
this.
Yeah.
Because it's when we think about Agile, by the way, we typically think delivery only. And so that we were talking about Agile and we were talking bigger picture had been my experience in my organization. So it was really nice that was reflected in that Agile extension. So members, you get Agile extension, you get a PDF version of that for free, but you can also purchase it um, if you want to learn more about those three horizons. Let's see. Looks like we have answered just about everything. You guys want to maybe just wrap up with some final thoughts for today? It's been good to have you, Breanne. I'm glad you
Thank you.
you you
I'll
made some time for us.
I'll just throw out there, business architecture is here to enable good business analysis and the organization. So it's not completely separate. I'm in the process of setting up a COE with our business analysis, but I'm going to be involved in it as well. One, to kind of mentor as well, but then on the alignment, right? I
Yeah.
need to enable the delivery and initiative horizon. So I'm going to be setting that group up here soon as well. But I do want to reiterate that even if it's not for you, business architecture. If you don't want to be the cruise liner ship and have to deal with culture and whatnot in there, it is okay. But please just understand it's here. Your organization should have something that enables you. So, understanding that it exists, reach out in your organization. Hey, who's doing this work? Because I feel I need to talk to them to enable me to do my work better. So even if it's not you, just having that awareness of what the organization should have will really help you do your job better.
Great
Yeah,
advice.
what a great summary. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Um, Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
sure I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. And that is it for today's broadcast. But in just 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the three I's of business analysis. Three I's. We've got a variety of guests who are going to tell you about that and a little bit more. So we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks.